Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to tackle something pretty important. Youth unemployment in South Africa. It's a tough situation. You got all this amazing potential, but so many young people are struggling to find decent work.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. And a complex one.
Right, exactly. But it's interesting. There's this whole industry that could be a big part of the solution.
Oh.
Construction. We're talking about building the future, literally.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
I mean, think about it. South Africa needs tons of new infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
Housing, roads, renewable energy projects, the whole works.
Absolutely. And the construction industry is a major engine for job creation.
Okay, so let's get down to it. How does construction actually translate into jobs, especially for young people? What does that look like on the ground?
Well, picture this. A huge construction project. You're going to need architects, engineers, project managers, all those folks.
Right, the brains of the operation?
Exactly. But then you also need skilled tradespeople like plumbers, electricians, carpenters.
The folks who make it all happen.
Yep. And then there's all the people who handle logistics, administration, even the folks who keep the site running smoothly.
So it's like a whole ecosystem, not just about swinging a hammer.
Exactly. It's an industry that's always growing and needs a wide range of skills, creates tons of potential entry points for young people at all different levels.
That's a really good point. It's not just one type of job. It's like a whole network of possibilities. But what about those who want to be their own boss? Does construction offer that kind of opportunity?
Totally. Think about those skilled trades we were talking about: plumbing, electrical work, carpentry. Those are fields where you can start by working for someone else, gain experience, build your skills.
Right, learn the ropes.
Exactly. And then, down the line, you can leverage those skills to start your own business.
And I bet the demand is there. Everyone needs a good plumber or electrician at some point.
That's for sure. There will always be a need for those essential services.
I love that. It's not just about getting a job. It's about equipping people to create their own opportunities. Gives them that sense of control.
Right. It's about empowerment. And, even for those who maybe see construction as a stepping stone to something else, the skills they learn along the way, those are super valuable no matter what field they end up in.
That's a great point. It's like building blocks for success. Teamwork, problem solving, learning to work with your hands. That's stuff you can use anywhere in life.
It's true. And it builds character, too.
Okay, so we've got diverse job options, the potential to be your own boss, transferable skills. Starting to sound pretty good, actually.
Right. Construction has a lot to offer.
But let's be real. There's got to be a reason why more young people aren't, flocking to construction. What are some of the roadblocks they're facing?
Well, to be honest, I think construction needs a bit of a rebrand. It often gets a bad rap.
Ah, I see what you mean.
It's seen as this kind of low-status, physically demanding job, not exactly the most innovative or exciting field, but that's really an outdated view.
Yeah, it's like judging a book by its cover.
Yeah.
There's so much more to it than meets the eye. But what about beyond the image issue? What about actually getting into the industry?
Training is a huge hurdle. In South Africa, we have TVET colleges, which are supposed to be this bridge between school and the construction industry.
So like the stepping stones.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of them are under-resourced, and they don't always reach the young people who need them most. It's like having the desire to learn, but not the opportunity to get there.
Right. It's not enough to just want to work in construction. You need that access to training and resources to make it a reality.
Exactly. It's a big barrier.
Okay, so we've got the image problem, the training gap. What else?
Funding. Starting any business is tough, but construction often needs a lot of money up front. Equipment, materials, all that.
It's a big investment.
It is. And for a lot of young people who want to start their own construction businesses, they just can't get the funding.
So we've got the image issue, the training gap, and the funding hurdle. Sounds like we're dealing with a pretty tangled web here.
Yeah, it's a complex issue for sure. And then there's the elephant in the room.
Oh, you mean?
The lack of collaboration. Really working together between the industry and the government. Policies aren't always aligned with job creation efforts. And sometimes, honestly, it feels like everyone's operating in their own little bubble.
Yeah, I get that.
Instead of pulling in the same direction.
Right. It's like everyone's on the same team, but they're playing different games.
Exactly.
So it's not just about fixing individual problems. It's about creating a whole system that actually supports young people in construction.
You got it. It's about looking at the bigger picture.
Okay. I'm starting to see how deep this rabbit hole goes.
Oh,
But before we spiral into, complete despair, Let's shift gears a bit and talk about solutions. There's got to be some light at the end of this tunnel, right?
Oh, absolutely. We've laid out the challenges, but now let's get to the exciting part, how we can actually turn this situation around. How do we unlock the potential of construction to change lives? That's what we need to focus on.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's dive into that.
There's also this historical baggage that construction kind of carries, especially here in South Africa.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, during apartheid, the construction industry was really tied to those labor practices, very rigid, very hierarchical.
Right, that makes sense.
And that image, it's not exactly appealing to a younger generation that wants to break free from the past.
Yeah, I totally see what you mean. It's like the industry is stuck with this old, outdated image, and that makes attracting young talent even harder. It's like trying to sell a black and white TV in the age of streaming.
Exactly. That's why this whole rebranding thing is so important.
It's like construction needs its own Got Milk campaign. Remember those?
Yeah.
Completely changed how people saw milk.
Yes. That's a great example. It's not just about changing perceptions. It's about creating a whole new narrative, one that shows how modern and inclusive construction really is.
Okay, so we're talking about more than just a makeover. It's about a fundamental shift in how we see construction.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we actually do that? What's the secret sauce?
Well, think about what resonates with young people today. Technology, sustainability, making a real difference in the world. Those are the things that can turn construction from just a job into something more, something like a calling,
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's break it down a bit.
Hmm.
How is technology changing the game in construction, and what does that mean for young people?
Okay, so imagine this. 3D printing. You're literally constructing buildings layer by layer from a computer design.
Whoa, 3D printed houses. That sounds straight out of a sci-fi movie.
I know, right? But it's happening, and it's opening up all these possibilities.
But how does this impact jobs for young people?
Well, it's not just about operating the 3D printers. It's about designing those structures, managing those projects, figuring out how to use the technology in a really smart and sustainable way. It's software development. It's engineering, data analysis. These are things that young people are already passionate about.
So it's like construction is becoming this high-tech, futuristic industry.
Exactly. This is not your grandpa's construction site.
I love it. It's a far cry from those images of, dusty hard hats and back-breaking labor.
Right. And then there's modular construction where you're building components off-site and then assembling them like a giant puzzle.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it requires so much precision, technical know-how, and that's creating a demand for a whole new set of skills.
It's amazing how technology isn't just changing how we build, but also the kinds of jobs that are out there.
Right, it's a whole new world.
Okay, let's talk sustainability. How does that fit into all of this?
Well, young people today are super concerned about climate change, right? They want to be part of the solution. And construction has historically been a big contributor to environmental problems. But now there's this huge push towards green building practices, using sustainable materials, minimizing waste, creating energy-efficient buildings.
So it's like construction is going green, and that's attracting a whole new generation of eco-conscious young people.
Exactly. They want to work in an industry that aligns with their values.
I love that. But what about the people who are already working in construction? Are they being left behind in all this, technological revolution?
That's a valid concern for sure. And that's why upskilling and reskilling programs are so important. We need to make sure that everyone has the chance to learn these new technologies so no one gets left behind.
Right. It's about bridging that gap between the old and the new, making sure everyone has a seat at the table, so to speak.
Exactly. And it's not just about technical skills either. Soft skills are becoming even more important, like communication, problem solving, that kind of thing. Because even with all this tech, it's still people who are driving innovation.
It's like the human element is still at the heart of it all.
Exactly. You need that balance, the human expertise combined with the technology.
Okay, so we've talked about the big picture, but what about the individuals? What about the young entrepreneurs who want to shake things up in construction? What are some of the unique challenges they face?
Well, honestly, they face a lot of the same hurdles as any entrepreneur. Access to funding is always tough, right? And they might not have a ton of experience yet. Plus, just navigating the whole world of business can be tricky.
Right, it's a steep learning curve.
It is, but in construction, it can be even tougher. Because the projects are often so large scale, you need a lot of upfront investment, and you really need to understand how the industry works.
So it's not just about having a great idea. You need the resources, the network, the know-how to actually make it happen.
You got it. And that's why mentorship programs can be so helpful for young entrepreneurs. Connecting them with experienced people in the industry can make a world of difference.
It's like having a guide to help you navigate that tricky construction landscape.
Exactly. And it can help them avoid those costly mistakes that can happen early on.
So mentorship is key.
Mm.
But what about the role of government in all of this? What can policymakers do to create a better environment for young people in construction?
Oh, the government has a huge role to play. They need to create the right conditions for the construction industry to thrive. And that means a lot of things. Streamlining regulations, investing in infrastructure, making sure policies are stable and predictable. That kind of thing encourages investment.
So it's about setting the stage for success, creating a fertile ground where innovation and entrepreneurship can flourish.
That's a great way to put it. The government can also be more proactive when it comes to skills development and entrepreneurship, especially in construction. They could have targeted funding programs, tax breaks for companies that hire and train young people, and initiatives to support small and medium-sized businesses.
So it's about creating that win-win situation where government policies are helping the industry grow, but they're also empowering young people at the same time.
Exactly. It's about aligning those goals.
Okay, let's zoom out for a minute. How can the construction industry help with some of South Africa's broader societal challenges?
Now that's where it gets really interesting, because construction isn't just about buildings, right? It's about building communities. It's about building opportunities. It's about building a more just and equitable society.
So it's about using construction as a tool for social change, not just economic development.
Exactly. Like, think about affordable housing projects. If we prioritize those, we can address the housing crisis and improve the lives of so many South Africans. And when we invest in infrastructure that connects communities, improves access to education and healthcare, promotes sustainable development, that's how you create a more inclusive society.
Wow, it's like construction becomes this ripple effect, spreading positive change across the whole social fabric.
I like that, the ripple effect.
But let's be real for a second. We can't ignore the elephant in the room, right? Corruption has been a major obstacle to development in South Africa.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure all these efforts to empower young people in construction aren't, derailed by corruption?
That's the million-dollar question. And there's no easy answer. But we need to attack it from all angles. Transparency in government tenders is super important. You need strong accountability mechanisms. And everyone involved, every stakeholder, needs to be committed to ethical practices.
So it's about building a system that's not just supportive of young people, but it's also resistant to corruption, a system with integrity at its core.
Exactly. If the foundation is strong, then everything built upon it will be too.
Like that analogy. So we've talked about the challenges, the opportunities, the social impact. It's a lot to process. But what stands out to you as the most important element in all of this? What's the key to really unlocking construction's potential?
For me, it all comes back to people. We can talk about tech, sustainability, all these fancy concepts, but ultimately it's people who are going to make this vision a reality. We need to invest in young people. Give them the skills, the resources, the opportunities they need to succeed, not just in construction, but in life.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's about seeing construction not just as an industry, but as a platform for human potential, a way to unlock creativity, ingenuity, entrepreneurial spirit.
Right, you got it.
Okay, but let's be honest. It's not all sunshine and roses, right?
Okay.
There are always obstacles to overcome. What are some of the biggest challenges that stand in the way of achieving this vision?
Well, the skills gap is a big one. We need to make sure young people have access to quality education and training. They need the right skills to succeed in this modern, ever-evolving construction industry.
Right. It's about making sure education is actually useful, and not just theoretical, but something that prepares them for the real world.
Exactly. And it's not just about training for today's jobs either. It's about the jobs of tomorrow. We need to anticipate what skills will be needed as technology continues to change the landscape of construction.
It's like we need to future-proof the workforce, give them the tools they'll need to navigate this constantly changing world. What else?
Funding, of course. It's a constant challenge. So many young entrepreneurs have great ideas, but they just don't have the capital to get started. It's that catch-22. You need experience to get funding, but you need funding to get experience.
The classic entrepreneur's dilemma.
I know, right? But that's where targeted funding programs and mentorship can really make a difference. Give those young entrepreneurs the boost they need to get off the ground.
It's about removing those barriers to entry and giving young people a real chance to participate in the industry, not just as workers, but as leaders, innovators, the whole package.
I love that. That's the goal.
Okay, and what about the whole perception thing we talked about earlier? How do we tackle that?
We need to change the narrative. Construction isn't this low-skill, low-paying industry anymore. It requires a whole new set of skills. We're talking about digital literacy, data analysis, problem-solving, critical thinking. It's not your grandpa's construction site anymore.
Right, it's like a whole new world of opportunities has opened up.
Exactly. And we need to showcase those opportunities, highlight the success stories, the young people who are thriving in construction, making a real difference in their communities.
It's about showing, not just telling, right?
Yeah.
People need to see that construction is a viable and exciting career path.
Exactly. We need to paint a new picture of what construction is all about.
Okay, so we've talked about skills, funding, perceptions. It's clear there's no magic bullet here. No single solution to all the challenges facing young people in construction.
It's about taking a holistic approach, looking at all the angles, creating a system that truly supports and empowers young people.
It's about building a future where construction isn't just a job. It's a pathway to opportunity, a platform for innovation, a force for positive change here in South Africa.
Yes, that's it. We need to shift the whole paradigm.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the big picture, but let's get down to brass tacks. How can technology be used to actually address these challenges, to accelerate progress? We've touched on it a bit, but I want to go deeper.
Oh, technology can be a game changer for sure. And not just in terms of efficiency and productivity, but also in how we address social and environmental challenges. It's about building smarter, not just faster or cheaper.
I like that, building smarter. So it's not just about doing things differently. It's about doing them better.
Exactly. And there are so many incredible innovations happening right now. 3D printing, robotics, building information modeling, BIM, even virtual reality is being used in construction. It's like the future is being built right before our eyes.
Okay, slow down. It's a lot to take in. Can you break it down for us? How are these technologies actually being used, and what are the benefits?
Sure. Let's start with 3D printing. We've talked about 3D printed houses, but it goes beyond that. You can create all sorts of building components with 3D printing, like walls, floors, even entire structural systems.
Wait, so we can really just print a house now?
Pretty much. It's amazing, and it has huge benefits. Construction is faster and cheaper, there's less waste, and it's safer too. Plus, architects have so much more design flexibility, they can create these really unique and innovative structures.
So faster, cheaper, safer, and more creative. I'm sold. But what about the environmental impact? Is this a sustainable way to build?
It can be. Because with 3D printing, you're only using the materials you need, so there's less waste than traditional construction. And it opens up possibilities for using recycled or locally sourced materials, which is good for the environment.
So it's not just about building things differently. It's about building them with a conscience.
Exactly. And then you've got robotics. Robots are already being used on construction sites for all sorts of tasks. They can do bricklaying, welding, demolition, excavation.
So they're taking over all the dangerous jobs.
Not necessarily taking over, more like assisting. They can work in hazardous environments, do those repetitive tasks with incredible precision, and even help human workers with heavy lifting.
So it's not about robots replacing humans. It's about robots and humans working together to create a safer, more efficient, and more productive work environment.
Exactly. Teamwork makes the dream work. And robotics also creates opportunities for young people who are interested in STEM fields, Designing and programming robots requires some serious skills that are in high demand these days.
So it's like construction is becoming this fusion of high-tech innovation and good old-fashioned craftsmanship.
Exactly. It's the best of both worlds.
Okay, I'm loving all this tech talk. What else you got?
All right, how about building information modeling?
Yep.
Or BIM for short.
Okay, BIM.
It's basically a digital twin of a building, a 3D model that contains all the information about the building's design, construction, and operation.
It's like a super detailed virtual blueprint.
You got it. And everyone involved in the project can access it. Architects, engineers, contractors, everyone.
That's amazing.
Right. It improves communication, reduces errors, and helps optimize the building's performance.
Wow, it's like having a crystal ball that shows you everything about the building, even before it's built.
I know. And you can even use BIM to simulate different design scenarios. So like architects can explore different options and see how they impact the building's energy efficiency or environmental footprint.
It's like taking a holistic approach to the entire life cycle of the building, from design to demolition.
Exactly. And it's creating new job opportunities too. BIM managers, data analysts, software developers, these are all roles that are in high demand because of BIM.
So it's not just about hammers and nails anymore. It's about data, algorithms, digital tools. The whole construction industry is becoming more high-tech.
It's true. And by embracing all these new technologies, we can create a construction industry that's not only more efficient and productive, but also more sustainable, equitable, and ultimately more rewarding for everyone involved.
It sounds like we're on the verge of a real revolution in construction. But with all this talk about technology, I can't help but think about the human side of things. How do we make sure that technology is serving people and not the other way around?
That's such an important question. We can't just blindly adopt technology without considering the consequences. Like, we need to think about the impact of automation on jobs, for example. Okay. While technology creates new jobs, it can also displace workers in certain areas.
That's like a double-edged sword.
It is. And we need to find ways to use technology to augment human capabilities, not replace them altogether.
It's about finding that balance, right?
Right.
Where technology enhances what humans can do rather than making them obsolete.
Exactly. And we need to invest in training programs that equip workers with the skills they need to thrive in a more technologically advanced workplace.
It's like teaching people how to swim in the digital ocean.
Haha. I love that analogy. But yeah, it's about empowering people to work alongside technology, not in competition with it. And beyond the economic impact, we need to think about the social and ethical considerations too.
Oh, absolutely. We can't just throw technology at a problem and hope for the best.
Right. We need to think critically about the potential impacts, both positive and negative, and develop guidelines to ensure that technology is being used responsibly and ethically.
It's like having a code of conduct for the digital age.
Exactly. And it's about having those tough conversations about access and equity, too. We need to make sure that everyone benefits from these technologies, not just a select few.
It's about bridging the digital divide, not widening it.
Yes. And that means providing access to technology and digital literacy training for those who have been left behind.
So it's about leveling the playing field and making sure everyone has the opportunity to participate in this technological revolution.
Exactly. Technology should be a tool for empowerment, not exclusion. And it can also be used to give communities a voice in shaping their own futures.
That's a powerful idea. Using technology to empower people, to give them more control over their lives.
Exactly. And when we do that, we can create a construction industry that's not just technologically advanced, but also socially just and equitable.
That's a vision I can get behind. But before we get too carried away with all this optimism, I want to touch on a crucial aspect that we haven't really addressed yet: sustainability. We've talked about how technology can contribute to a more sustainable construction industry, but can you elaborate on that? What are some key ways technology can be used to actually reduce the environmental impact of construction?
Oh, there are so many exciting developments happening in this area. For example, there are all these new materials being developed that are both durable and sustainable.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, there are bio-based materials made from things like bamboo or hemp, and there are recycled materials like recycled plastic or concrete, and there are even these crazy self-healing materials that can extend the lifespan of buildings so you don't have to repair or replace them as often.
With self-healing materials. What is this science fiction?
I know it sounds futuristic, but it's real. The point is, it's not just about using less, it's about using smarter materials that are better for the planet.
So it's like we're moving from a take, make, waste model to a more circular and sustainable approach.
Exactly. And technology is also key to making buildings more energy efficient.
Tell me more about that.
Well, there are these smart building systems that can monitor and optimize energy consumption. So you're reducing waste and lowering those carbon emissions.
That's like giving buildings a brain.
I love that analogy. They're becoming intelligent.
So we're making buildings smarter, not just prettier.
Exactly. And it's not just about the buildings themselves, it's about the whole construction process. Like 3D printing can really reduce material waste compared to traditional methods. And off-site prefabrication can reduce transportation emissions and minimize disruption on the construction site.
It's like streamlining the entire construction process, making it more efficient and less impactful on the environment.
Precisely. And when you combine all these innovations, you can really start to see how the construction industry can play a leading role in the transition to a more sustainable, low-carbon economy.
It's pretty inspiring, actually. But what about the social impact? How do we make sure these technologies are benefiting everyone, not just a select few?
That's such an important consideration because technology can sometimes exacerbate existing social inequalities if we're not careful.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Like, imagine if affordable housing projects rely on these really expensive technologies that are out of reach for low-income communities. That could actually widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Right, that would defeat the whole purpose.
Exactly. So we need to be really intentional about developing and deploying technologies that address the needs of underserved communities, technologies that promote social equity.
It's about using technology to bridge the gap, not widen it.
Yes. And it's about making sure the benefits of technological progress are shared equitably. Everyone should have the opportunity to participate in the digital economy, regardless of their background.
So it's about creating a more inclusive and equitable technological landscape, a rising tide that lifts all boats.
I love that. A rising tide. And that includes addressing the digital divide, making sure that everyone has access to technology and the skills they need to use it effectively.
It's about making sure no one is left behind in the digital revolution.
Exactly. And it's also about using technology to empower communities, giving people a voice in shaping their own futures.
So it's not just about building things for people, it's about building things with people, using technology to facilitate collaboration, communication, and community engagement.
Precisely. When you involve people in the process, you create a more just and equitable outcome. And that's how you build a construction industry that's not just technologically advanced, but also socially responsible.
That's a powerful vision. But we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive. Before we move on to the final part, what stands out to you as the most crucial element in all of this? What's the key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
You know, for me, it all boils down to recognizing how interconnected everything is. The technological advancements, the need for sustainability, the social and political context, these aren't separate issues. They're all woven together.
So it's about seeing the big picture, understanding how all these pieces fit together.
Exactly. And recognizing that the construction industry has a huge impact on our lives, our communities, and our planet. The buildings and infrastructure we create today will shape the world for generations to come.
Wow, that's a powerful thought. It's like we're building the legacy of tomorrow.
We are, and that's why it's so important to be mindful of the choices we make today.
It's a call to action for all of us to think critically about how we want to shape the future.
Absolutely. We all have a role to play in creating a more sustainable, equitable, and inspiring built environment.
I love that. So it's not just about the architects and engineers. It's about all of us.
Exactly. We all need to be part of the conversation.
Well said. And on that note, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be diving into the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore the human element of construction, the challenges facing construction workers today, and what can be done to create a more supportive and rewarding work environment. Stay tuned.
You know, listening to you makes me think about all the amazing things happening in construction these days. It's like a whole new world.
I know, right? It's pretty exciting. It almost makes me wish I'd gone into construction myself.
Uh-huh. Well, it's never too late to learn new things, but I get what you mean. There's definitely a buzz around the industry right now, a real sense of momentum. And it's not just about, building things anymore. It's about pushing boundaries, redefining what's possible.
Yeah, and it seems like young people are really driving that change, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. They're not just entering the industry. They're coming in with this whole new set of values and expectations.
They're like a breath of fresh air.
Exactly. They want to see sustainability, ethical practices, a focus on social impact, and they're not afraid to challenge the old ways of doing things.
They're shaking things up. So it's not just about attracting young people to construction, it's about creating an industry that actually aligns with their values.
That's the key. You have to speak to what matters to them.
But how do we make sure all those good intentions actually translate into concrete actions?
Yeah.
It's one thing to talk about a better future for construction, but how do we actually get there?
That's the million-dollar question. Well, I think education is a good place to start.
Makes sense.
We need to make sure the next generation of construction professionals are equipped. They need the right knowledge, the right skills, but also the right values. It's not just about teaching them how to build. It's about teaching them how to build responsibly, how to build sustainably, how to build ethically.
So it's like instilling a sense of purpose, Construction isn't just a job. It's a way to make a positive impact on the world.
Exactly. And we need to foster a culture of collaboration and innovation, break down those silos that can exist between different parts of the industry,
Oh, yeah, the architects over here, the engineers over there, the contractors doing their own thing.
Exactly. We need to get everyone on the same page, sharing ideas, working together.
So it's about bringing people together, creating a space where ideas can flow freely and innovation can flourish.
Yes. And it's not just about the people within the industry either. We need to engage with communities.
Oh, right, getting input from the people who will actually be living and working in these spaces.
Exactly. Listen to their needs and priorities. Make sure their voices are heard.
So it's about moving away from that top-down approach and creating a more inclusive process, one where everyone has a seat at the table.
Exactly. Collaboration is key. And we need to embrace diversity, too, not just in terms of who we hire, but in terms of perspectives, ideas, ways of approaching problems.
Because a more diverse industry is a more innovative industry. It's a stronger industry.
Exactly. And it's a more just and equitable industry, one that reflects the society we want to create.
Okay, so we've talked about education, collaboration, community engagement, and diversity. Those are some pretty powerful tools for building a better future for construction.
They are.
But what about the role of government? What can policymakers do to actually support this transformation?
Well, government has a huge influence, right? They shape the built environment through policies, regulations, investments. There's so much they can do to promote a more sustainable, equitable, and resilient construction industry.
So it's not just about the private sector doing its thing. It's about government stepping up and taking a more proactive role.
Absolutely. They can incentivize sustainable building practices, like offering tax breaks, subsidies, that kind of thing.
So they can use financial tools to encourage companies to do the right thing.
Exactly. And they can create green building codes and standards, So new construction has to meet certain environmental criteria.
Right, so it's like setting the bar higher, making sustainability the rule, not the exception.
That's the idea. And governments can also invest in research and development, support those innovators who are coming up with all these amazing sustainable technologies and materials.
Yeah, invest in the future.
Exactly. And they can also play a role in workforce development, providing training programs so workers have the skills they need for this new, more sustainable construction industry.
So it's about investing in people, empowering them to adapt and thrive in this changing landscape.
Exactly. And finally, it's about creating a space for collaboration, bringing together government, industry, and civil society to work together.
So it's back to that idea of partnership and shared responsibility.
Exactly. We're all in this together. And by pooling our resources and expertise, we can achieve amazing things.
We've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? It's been a real deep dive into the world of construction, all its complexities, its challenges, but also its incredible potential.
It has. And I think it's safe to say that the future of construction is looking pretty bright.
I agree. There's so much innovation happening, so much creativity, and a real sense of purpose. It's inspiring to see how the industry is evolving.
I know. It's exciting to be a part of it.
And to our listeners, we want to leave you with a challenge. Think about the buildings and infrastructure in your own community. What could be done to make them more sustainable, more equitable, more inspiring?
What role can you play in shaping the future of construction? What kind of world do you want to build?